મિનિટ સારું લાગે છે.
Good morning to one and all. I, Ashmakazi, welcome you all here this morning for the national webinar on wetlands, versatile, valuable, and vulnerable, organized by We for Nature and Gujarat University Botanical Society. We have with us our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Himanshu Pandya, as President of the function, our Pro Vice Chancellor, Dr. Jagdish Bhausar, our Registrar, Dr. P.M. Patel, as our guest of honor, ACF, Ms. Vibha Goswami, Deputy Director, Gir Foundation, as our chairman, our distinguished resource person, Dr. Ketan Tatu, Senior Scientist from Gir Foundation, Gandhinagar. Faculty members of the department, Ashna ma'am, Solanki sir, Maitreya sir, Modi sir, Soumya sir, and participants, I welcome you all heartily. Gujarat University is on a fast track of progress. We are proud of our university, and as a mark of respect, let us rise for our university song.
वंदन अभिनंदन वंदन अभिनंदन वंदन अभिनंदन वंदन अभिनंदन वंदन अभिनंदन गुजरात यूनिवर्सिटी आपणी गुजरात यूनिवर्सिटी आपणी विद्यातणु तपोवन वंदन अभिनंदन वंदन अभिनंदन वंदन अभिनंदन वंदन अभिनंदन राष्ट्र चेतना कला साधना खेल भावना विकसे विश्व मानवी बनी गुजराती विश्व सकल માં વિલસે સ્નેહ સંપ સહકારની સાથે દેતી તું સંમતિ સૌના સાથને સંગાથે સૌ સિદ્ધ કરે ઉન્નતિ પ્રેમ બંધુતા સમાનતાના પલ પલ પ્રસરે સ્પંદન વંદન અભિનંદન વંદન અભિનંદન वंदन अभिनंदन वंदन अभिनंदन वंदन अभिनंदन वंदन अभिनंदन वंदन अभिनंदन
Now I request Ashna ma'am to formally welcome the guests.
Thank you, Ashma. Good afternoon. It's indeed a pleasure to welcome you all here for the national webinar on wetlands, versatile, valuable, and vulnerable. Gujarat University, with the vision and mission of our Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Himanshu Pandya, is progressing by leaps and bounds. We are proud that our university has 5-star ranking by GSIRF and was selected in top 50 universities in India by NIRF 2021. I welcome Pandya sir, who has always inspired not only the students but the teaching and administrative fraternity to excel with utmost dedication. I welcome our Pro Vice Chancellor Dr. Jagdish Bhausar, who has always motivated us and guided us in all our endeavors. I also welcome our Registrar Dr. P.M. Patel, who has been extremely supportive. I heartily welcome our Chief Guest, ACF Ms. Vibha Goswami, Deputy Director, Gir Foundation. I welcome our distinguished resource person, Dr. Ketan Tatu, Senior Scientist, Gir Foundation, Gandhinagar, and I am grateful to him for accepting to share his expertise with us. I also welcome my colleagues in the department, Professor Hitesh Solanki, Professor Bharat Maitre, Dr. Nainish Modi, Dr. Soumya Patel, and all the participants. The significance of wetlands are innumerable. Apart from preventing shoreline erosion, they provide habitat for thousands of aquatic flora and fauna. Anthropogenic pressures have seriously impacted the wetlands. It's high time we realize the need to conserve this unique ecosystem. I once again welcome Dr. Ketan Tatu and request him to share his rich research experiences with us. We look forward to a great learning experience. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Himanshu Pandya sir, and our Pro Vice Chancellor, Dr. Jagdish Bhavsar sir, are in meeting and they have conveyed their best wishes for this webinar. We have with us our Registrar, Dr. P.M. Patel sir. Sir, we look forward to your blessings.
નમસ્કાર. આમ તો આજના પ્રોગ્રામનો જે ટોપિક છે એને જોઈને જોઈન થયા છીએ એટલે સરને અને મેડમને સાંભળવાની એક તક છે આજે. વ્યક્તિગત રીતે કહું તો ઓફિસ બેરર તરીકે આજના પ્રોગ્રામમાં અત્રે ઉપસ્થિત રિસ્પેક્ટેડ મેડમ અર્ચના મેડમ, હેડ બોટની ડિપાર્ટમેન્ટ, હમણાં જ આપણી સાથે જોડાયા સર રિસ્પેક્ટેડ કેતનભાઈ સાહેબ અને ગોસ્વામી મેડમ. હર્બલનો જ્યારે પાર્ટ આવે ત્યારે પ્રવર્તમાન સ્થિતિમાં જેમ આપણે બધા જાણીએ છીએ કે આ વર્ષ એ આપણું આઝાદીના અમૃત મહોત્સવનું વર્ષ છે, એટલે કે 75 વર્ષ થયા. સરકારશ્રી પણ ઘણા સમયથી પ્લાન્ટેશન્સ એટલે કે સજીવ, આપણે જેને કે સજીવ ખેતી કે ગ્રીન ખેતી, એ ટાઈપના પ્લાન્ટેશન્સ પર વધારે ફોકસ કરી રહી છે અને કન્ટિન્યુઅસ જેને કહેવાય કે એગ્રીકલ્ચરમાં એગ્રીપ્રિનરશિપ, સસ્ટેનેબિલિટી ડેવલપમેન્ટ્સ અને આ ટાઈપના નવા નવા વિષયો ડેવલપ થઈ રહ્યા છે. ત્યારે રિસ્પેક્ટેડ અર્ચના મેડમની આ ડિપાર્ટમેન્ટ થકી બોટનીમાં કન્ટિન્યુઅસ હું જોઉં કે એની અંદર યુનિવર્સિટીની અંદર કન્ટિન્યુઅસ એમાં ડેવલપમેન્ટ થઈ રહ્યું છે. ઇવન ગ્રીન ખેતી સુધી પણ આપણે યુનિવર્સિટીની અંદર ડેવલપ થઈ રહ્યા છીએ. તો આ સમયે રિસ્પેક્ટેડ ઓનરેબલ વાઇસ ચાન્સેલર સર પ્રોફેસર ડોક્ટર હિમાંશુભાઈ પંડ્યા સાહેબ, રિસ્પેક્ટેડ ઓનરેબલ પ્રો વીસી સાહેબ ડોક્ટર જગદીશભાઈ ભાવસાર સર અને બોટની ડિપાર્ટમેન્ટ તથા જીયુ ફેમિલીમાં આજે એક બોટની ડિપાર્ટમેન્ટ થકી મને યાદ છે કે થોડા સમય પહેલા પણ એક પ્રોગ્રામ કરેલો કે જેમાં પ્લાસ્ટિક વેસ્ટ પણ બધો લીધેલો બોટની ડિપાર્ટમેન્ટના વિદ્યાર્થીઓ થકી. તો આ પ્રકારના પ્રોગ્રામોથી યુનિવર્સિટીની જે ભૂમિકા છે, એઝ અ ઓફિસ બેરર કહું તો યુનિવર્સિટીની ભૂમિકામાં સોશિયલ રિસ્પોન્સિબિલિટી અને સોશિયલ રિસ્પોન્સિવનેસ કે જે વિદ્યાર્થીઓમાં ઘડાય એ દિશામાં યુનિવર્સિટીને માર્ગદર્શન સતત આ ડિપાર્ટમેન્ટ પૂરું પાડે છે. તો હું યુનિવર્સિટીના ઓફિસ બેરર થકી આ વેબિનારના આયોજક એવા મેડમ તથા અત્રે ઉપસ્થિત કેતનભાઈ સાહેબ અને ગોસ્વામી મેડમ તથા હોલ ટીમ ઓફ બોટની ડિપાર્ટમેન્ટ આઈ પર્સનલી કોંગ્રેચ્યુલેટ એન્ડ મને જોઈન થવા માટે ઇન્વાઇટ કરવા બદલ તેમનો ઓફકોર્સ આભાર માનું છું. અને બીકોઝ આઈ જોઈન I want to learn something on that, and once as a team we will learn and we will definitely develop. So once again, thank you to the department from the GU office bearer. Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. Our chief guest, ACF, Ms. Vibha Goswami, is Deputy Director, Geese Foundation. Vibha ma'am has been looking after Indroda Nature Park, Aranya Park, and Hingolgarh Sanctuary. Ma'am is ACF from 2018 batch and completed training from Central Academy of for State Forest Services, Dehradun. We welcome you, ma'am, and request you to bless us. I
Yeah, Ashma, just wait
yeah,
for a minute. Let me just
yeah.
check. Yes, ma'am. It is here.
સોરી, નેટવર્ક ઇશ્યુના લીધે થઈને કદાચ થોડોક રાહ જોવી પડી હશે તમને બધાને.
કાંઈ વાંધો નહીં, યા.
સો વેરી ગુડ મોર્નિંગ ટુ વન એન્ડ ઓલ. આપણો જે સેમિનાર છે અને એના અમારા જ ફાઉન્ડેશનના જે સિનિયર સાયન્ટિસ્ટ છે ડૉક્ટર કેતન ટાટુ, તો એ તમને વધારે આ વિષય પર જે છે તો એ માર્ગદર્શન આપશે. આપણને બધાને ખબર છે કે વેટલેન્ડ ડે નજીકમાં આવી રહ્યો છે અને અત્યારે બધા જ મોટાભાગે જે પર્યાવરણ વિષયો છે એના પ્રત્યે વધારે જાગૃત છે. એ જાણીને મને પણ ખૂબ જ હર્ષની લાગણી થાય છે કે અત્યારે કોલેજીસ અને ઇવન સ્ટુડન્ટ્સ જે સ્કૂલના છે એ પણ ઘણા પર્યાવરણ એટલે નેચર કન્ઝર્વેશનના સબ્જેક્ટ પર ખૂબ જ ધ્યાન આપી અને એના માટે બનતા પ્રયત્નો કરી રહ્યા છે. તો એક ગર્વ લેવા જેવું વસ્તુ જે છે એ આપણા જે નજીકનું ભવિષ્ય છે, જેને યુનિવર્સિટીના સ્ટુડન્ટ્સ છે જે નજીકનું ભવિષ્ય કહેવાય આપણું, તો એ લોકો એના પર આટલા કન્સર્ન છે એ જાણીને પણ ઘણી ખુશી અનુભવું છું. કેમ કે મોટાભાગે એવું થાય છે કે જેની ડ્યુટી છે એ પરફોર્મ કરી રહ્યા છે, જેમ કે ફોરેસ્ટ ડિપાર્ટમેન્ટ ઓફિશિયલ્સ. તો આ જે પણ વસ્તુ છે એ કોઈ એક વ્યક્તિ અથવા તો કોઈ એક ડિપાર્ટમેન્ટની નથી, કેમ કે વર્ષોની આપણને ખ્યાલ છે કે જે પ્રક્રિયા થઈ છે અને અત્યારે એના આપણે પરિણામો ભોગવી રહ્યા છીએ, જેમ કે ક્લાઇમેટ ચેન્જ છે. તો એ બધું જે છે એ એક સાથે નથી થઈ જતું, કે એ કોઈ એક જ દિવસે નથી થઈ જતું. તો આપણો જે અત્યારે નેચર કન્ઝર્વેશનનો અને જે પણ એફર્ટ્સ આપણે લગાવી રહ્યા છે, તો એમાં પણ એ જ વસ્તુ છે કે આપણે બધાએ સાથે મળીને જે છે આ કરવું પડશે. અને કોઈ પણ આપણને ખબર છે કે આહાર શૃંખલા જે આપણે કહીએ છીએ કે જે ફૂડ ચેન છે એની અંદર કોઈ એક જો કડી ના હોય તો એ આખી ચેનનો કોઈ મતલબ નથી રહેતો. સામાન્ય પણ આપણે કોઈ ચેન છે એની અંદર એક કડી જો ખોવાઈ જશે અથવા તો વિખૂટી પડી જશે અથવા તો નબળી પડી જશે, તો જે પૂરી ચેન છે એનો કોઈ મતલબ રહેતો નથી. તો એ રીતે ઇકોલોજીની અંદર દરેક કમ્પોનન્ટ છે એ બહુ જ ઉપયોગી છે. તો આપણે કોઈ પણ કમ્પોનન્ટ છે કે આપણે સમજીએ કે કોઈ કીટક છે કે કંઈ પણ, તો દરેકનું એક રોલ હોય છે જે બીજું કોઈ એને પ્લે નથી કરી શકતું. તો આપણે દરેક જે ઇકોસિસ્ટમના જે પણ કમ્પોનન્ટ્સ છે એનું ધ્યાન રાખીએ અને આપણે એનું કન્ઝર્વેશન કરીએ. અને હું દર વખતે મારા દરેક સંબોધનની અંદર અથવા તો કોઈને પણ હું કરું છું એડ્રેસ, તો હું કહું છું કે એક એવી આદત પાડવી જોઈએ કે જે તમે નેચર કન્ઝર્વેશન કરી રહ્યા છો તો એના સ્ટેપ માટે એક નાનું કદમ હોય, પણ એ તમારું અને તમારા ફેમિલી પૂરતું સફિશિયન્ટ છે. અને એ જ તમે આગળ ધપાવશો તો તમારું જોઈને બીજા 4 જણ કરશે, તો જે સારી વસ્તુ છે એનો ફેલાવો થાય. તો બસ એક એવી આદત પાડજો કે જે હંમેશા માટે તમે નેચર કન્ઝર્વ કરો છો, તો એ તમારા નેચર કન્ઝર્વેશનની અંદર તમારો શું એફર્ટ્સ છે, તો એવી એક આદત પાડજો બસ.
થેન્ક યુ મેમ ફોર
વધારે સમય નથી લેતી અને હવે આગળનું જે પ્રેઝન્ટેશન છે એ આપણે કેરી ઓન કરીએ. અને થેન્ક યુ સો મચ અર્ચના મેડમ એન્ડ ગુજરાત યુનિવર્સિટી other members. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable inputs.
You're welcome.
Now we have with us our distinguished resource person, Dr. Ketan Tatu, Senior Scientist at Gujarat Ecological Education and Research, also known as Gir Foundation at Gandhinagar. Dr. Tatu is wetland ecology expert, member of the State Wetland Authority, Gujarat. His expertise is in wetland ecology, wildlife, and waterbirds. He has been contributing to wetland and waterbird studies in Gujarat since last 3 decades. He has earned 2 doctoral degrees on subjects related to wetlands waterbirds. His first PhD was in environment science from Gujarat University, wherein he carried out a study on Nal Sarovar, a Ramsar site, as waterbird habitat using satellite remote sensing technique. Sir also carried out an assessment of impacts of mute swan herbivory on submerged aquatic vegetation in Chesapeake Bay, Maryland for his second doctoral degree from West Virginia University, USA. He has also worked as a postdoctoral researcher for studying migration stopover ecology of red note in coastal Virginia that included red note netting, radio transmitter implanting, and radio tracking techniques. His expertise is employed illustrated not only in mentoring students for their dissertations and thesis work, but also in so many research publications, book chapters, articles, books, and online e-periodical Jal Plavit. Besides all this, Sir has been part of radio talks, documentary film script writing, interviewing international wetland experts, and TV programs to generate awareness among public for wetlands. Sir, we are very grateful that you accepted our invitation and we look forward to your talk on wetlands, versatile, valuable, and vulnerable.
Sir, you are mute. Yeah.
Okay.
ના પાછું મ્યુટ થઈ ગયું.
Hello.
Yeah.
Is that okay now?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would thank Dr. Archana Madam for considering me for this webinar. I'm really grateful to her because if we know a lot of things about some subject and if we are not given any opportunity to share with, especially with students, it has less meaning. I am also thankful to all the higher authorities of Gujarat University, and I hope I can say some useful things for your students today. Can I start formal presentation now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is it visible on the screen?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Yes. Sir.
Okay, okay. So my today's topic is wetlands, versatile, valuable, and vulnerable. That was already told by Archana Madam. Today I will, in this topic, I will give some basic, I will impart some basic understanding about wetlands, and I will also talk about their status in India and how they are versatile, valuable, and vulnerable. Let us first have some rapport with these wetlands. Okay. Basically, these are the lands. You know, that word itself has a phrase called land. So these are the lands which have predominance of water. Okay. And they can occur in two conditions. Number one, land may be covered with shallow water. It may be submerged under shallow water. And sometimes land is not covered with water, but it is saturated with water. So sometimes people ask me that there was already a very famous phrase called water body. Then why this new term, wetlands? So I would say in short that wetlands include water bodies, but all the water bodies may not include wetland. આપણે ગુજરાતીમાં wetlands ને જળપ્લાવિત વિસ્તાર અથવા તો જળપ્લાવિત ક્ષેત્ર કહેવામાં આવે છે. અને water bodies, everybody knows in Gujarati or in Hindi, it is called jalashay. So if you consider ponds, lakes, maybe even rivers, they are all water bodies, okay, and they are also wetlands, because if you consider about its basins, they are wet. So ponds, lakes, rivers, they are water bodies and they are also wetlands. But if you consider some saturated land, like suppose if you are walking along a sea beach and if the soil is moist, if you put your step, the water will ooze out of it. So it is wet land, but it is not water body. So I will reiterate that wetlands include water bodies, but all water bodies do not include wetlands. For example, there are marshes also. Marshes may not be generally called jalashay. Okay, they are called daldal or saran in Gujarati. So they may not be called water bodies, So, but they are wetlands. So, wetlands is more broad term which includes water bodies. Now, whatever grows here, like plant or whatever animals live here, they are controlled by water and not any other medium like land or air. So, maximum effect will be of water. Now, whatever I told right now, I have presented here with the help of some easy photograph and drawing. If you take this portion where I have written submerge, so if just imagine this area, it is quite clear that the land in this area is submerged under water. Okay, so this is one condition. This is definitely a wetland, and you may call it water body also, right? Now here, as I told you, if this is a sea beach area which is very near to this tidal action, okay, but it is not underwater, but you can easily make out that this land here or sand here is quite wet. Okay, it is saturated. જેને આપણે ગુજરાતીમાં કહીએ કે સંતૃપ્ત છે પાણીથી. So if you walk along this, that water will keep oozing out. Okay, so this is saturated situation, this is submerged situation, and this is unsaturated or somewhere here which is at the height from this water body's level. So here there is no question of submergence or saturation. So this is not a wetland. Okay, both these conditions represent wetland, but not these two. Okay, so this with the help of this diagram, I have tried to explain it. What is saturated, what is submerged, etc. Here, this is a more detailed scenario. If you just consider these soil particles, so these voids, in case of the voids in between these soil particles, in case of unsaturated, there would be predominance of air or some water. And in case of saturation, all the air has gone because air has been replaced by water. So all these voids in between the soil particles, they are filled with water, and that creates the saturated condition. And here, everything is underwater. So this is the third condition. This is submerged water. Okay. So these are I am trying to explain in detail what is saturated, what is submerged, what is unsaturated, etc. So these two conditions are of wetland and not this one. Okay. Whenever we try to understand some topics, definitions are always useful. Some early wetland researchers have given good definition. For example, there is a gentleman called Maltby. In 1986, he gave a definition that wetland is a collective term for ecosystem whose formation has been dominated by water and whose processes and characteristics are largely controlled by water. So it is a wonderful definition that the formation as well as its processes and characteristics, everything is controlled by water. Then Cowardin et al. 1979, he is also a very famous wetland scientist of USA. He said that these are the lands of transition between terrestrial and aquatic systems, where the water table is usually at or near the surface of the land, or the land is covered by shallow water. Now, this was a very early and very famous definition in USA. And then after some years, US Fish and Wildlife Service gave a more comprehensive definition based on this fundamental definition. I will explain all these terms with the help of diagram for the benefit of students. What is transition? What is the water table is at or near the surface? What is all that? Okay, I will come to that slide later. And there is one biodiversity related definition. Wetlands are a halfway world between terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem and exhibit some of the characteristics of each. So what he means to say that the organisms living here, they are adapted to live on either terrestrial part or aquatic. Not always, but many of them. So these are the three useful definitions of wetlands. Here I will try to explain that definition. What is transitional and what is what is water table situation with respect to land surface, etc. So let us focus on this first left-hand figure. Here you can see this bluish smudge here. It is a satellite image of Nal Sarovar. I think in Gujarat or even in India, Nal Sarovar is very famous. It is one of the Ramsar sites. So this is Nal Sarovar, and it is a real wetland, which is a transition zone between this truly aquatic system, which is Gulf of Cambay. Water will be always present here. It may be, according to tidal condition, it may fluctuate, but water will be always present here. So it is true aquatic system. And if you consider the upland area, all this terrestrial system, so this wetland is located in between terrestrial system upland terrestrial system of Viramgam and Sanan and I think Lakhtar area. So that is a terrestrial system, and this is Gulf of Cambay, truly aquatic system. And whenever there is a good rainfall in the upland area, water comes to Nal Sarovar, and then when sometimes the entire Nal Sarovar is filled to brink with water when there is a very good rainfall, and then excess water goes through these channels and goes to this Gulf of Cambay. It is not the other way around. Water never goes from Gulf of Cambay to Nal Sarovar, but due to that particular gradient also, excess water from Nal Sarovar can go to Gulf of Cambay. So it shows a transitional position. So I think I have explained this phrase like transitional. What is transitional? This is truly terrestrial system. This is truly aquatic system. And here, sometimes water may be present, sometimes water may not be present. So actually, in any wetland, this dynamic behavior of water is very important. You may not expect that water will be always there. Then it will become water body. Okay, this is water body. But in wetland, in a true wetland, water may be, you may observe the dynamic behavior of water. If you go to Nal Sarovar during a good rainfall, you will find that it is like a mini sea. People say that nano daryo chhe to. So, but when you go to Nal Sarovar in March or April, you may find sometime completely dried also. So that is a dynamic behavior of wetland, and it is very useful for many other wetland processes, like many seeds are buried in the basin. So if when the water is removed or water gets dry, they get chance for regeneration and all that. So one should not consider that, okay, this Nal Sarovar gets dry, let us fill it with water forever. It may not be according to its original ecological characteristic. I will come to the topic of Ramsar Convention, and they have used the word wise use of wetland. What is wise use? Wise use means your use of particular wetland should not be such that it will affect its original ecological characteristics. Okay. So let us come again to this three phases where water table is usually at or near surface of the land, or land is covered with water. Now, this is a very simple condition. I think you can see this arrow on the screen. I hope so. So here the water is covered, that land is covered with shallow water. This is first situation, which is very, very easy to understand. Here, this is a condition showing water table near surface of the land. So this is the water table, wherever this blue part is ending, this border, the water table is here, and land surface is here. So it is not touching the land surface. There is some gap. So this is the water table near land surface. This is one condition. And here, if you can see in the below figure, this water table at the surface of land, you can see that here water table has come up to the land surface. So these are the three conditions I have explained here with the help of diagram. This is first is covered, land is covered with shallow water. Here water table is near the land surface, and here water table and land surface are very much in physical contact. Okay. Now, this is the definition of wetland given by US Fish and Wildlife Service. Okay, so this is just a beginning of the definition. It is a bit comprehensive definition. It continues here. Wetlands must have one or more of the following three attributes. If we want to say that this particular land is wetland, then it should satisfy that particular land piece or land patch should satisfy at least one attribute out of these three. Number one, at least periodically the land predominantly supports hydrophytes. So hydrophytes are very important to decide whether a particular land, particular wetland is indeed wetland or not. Okay, so that particular land should at least periodically support hydrophyte. As this, I am talking to people from botany, there is nothing new for them. What is hydrophytes? The plants which have adapted to live and survive in the aquatic environment. Okay, so they can be emergent hydrophytes, they can be submerged hydrophytes, they can be floating hydrophytes, etc. So that is first attribute. Okay, that land piece which is appearing wet it should have hydrophytes, at not necessarily for throughout the year, but maybe at least 3-4 months, 6 months, etc. Second condition, the substrate is predominantly undrained hydric soil. So this is about the soil character. This is about the vegetation character. Now this is about soil character. That if a particular land has hydric soil, now somebody may ask, what is hydric soil? They say that the soil which is frequently flooded, the soil which is frequently inundated, or the soil which is frequently covered with ponded with water, then it is considered as hydric soil, because the continuous effect of water on that soil will create anaerobic micro environment in that soil. Because all those, I had shown that diagram earlier, that there was, in unsaturated land, there was air in the voids between the particles, soil particles. But here what would happen, that due to continuous inundation or flooding, those voids will be filled with water, and gradually that becomes anaerobic environment. There will be less of oxygen in that, and in that kind of soil only hydrophytes can survive, because of presence of parenchyma in roots and stems, etc. So this is number one. This is hydric soil. I have explained what is hydric soil. Undrained, the water should not be easily drained into it. So right? So I just explained what is hydric soil. Hydric soil is the soil which is frequently inundated or flooded or ponded, okay, and due to which its micro environment because becomes more or less anoxic or anaerobic. And there is third attribute also, that people are less aware about this situation, especially in our country, because there are some wetlands whose basins are not made of soil. They are called peatlands. Peat is nothing but the slowly decomposing vegetation matter. Okay, so because there is anaerobic environment, those bacteria cannot work efficiently enough on that decaying material. So there would be layers and layers of decaying plants and all that, and that is called peat. So in such peatland, the substrate is not of soil, but it is of this kind of decaying plant matter mainly. It may also include dead animal matter, but predominantly this plant matter. So this is the third situation. So if your land under consideration has any of these attributes, it can be considered as a wetland. And this is according to US Fish and Wildlife Service definition, which is very, very popular in North American countries. In India, this Ramsar Convention definition is very, very popular, and it is widely in use. It says that areas of marsh, fen, peatlands, and water that is natural or artificial, permanent or temporary, with water that is static or flowing, fresh, brackish, or salt, including the area of marine waters, the depth of which at low tide does not exceed 6 meters at low tide. So it is very comprehensive definition, and it is basically habitat-oriented definition. In US Fish and Wildlife Service, you saw that they give emphasis on hydrophytes and type of soil, etc., and transitional character of water. But here they are using the terms like marsh, then fen, then flowing water, then static water, then brackish water. So it is more towards habitat type, various wetland habitat types. So that is one thing. It might be interesting to know that Ramsar Convention was earlier, when it was originated in 1971. It was called Ramsar Convention for Conservation of Waterfall. So originally it was for conservation of waterfall, but they dropped that term later on to make the convention more holistic. So one may wonder that why this magic figure has come, 6 meters. Why not 8? Why not 10? Or why not 5? So the reason is that because earlier it was Waterfall Conservation Convention. It is interesting to know that the diving ducks, they usually go up to 6 meters to fetch their food from the water column. Okay, especially the sea ducks which live in sea also. So that's why these low tide etc. terms are used here. So this 6 meter is due to the scientific fact that diving ducks usually go up to 6 meter to fetch their food from the water column. So that's why they have kept it as 6 meters. Okay. Now you can see this flowing, fresh, brackish, etc. I think students might be knowing what is fresh, what is brackish. If the this salinity of that water is 0.5 ppt or less, then it is fresh water. Okay, and salt water, if you go to collect sample of sea water, it may be anywhere 35 ppt or more. And intermediate is called brackish. Okay, so these three terms have their own meanings. Static or flowing means if you go to Nal Sarovar, the water is, we can say it is a standing water. Okay, you cannot say that it is a water is flowing. But if you go to some good river, the water is flowing. So the static water is called lentic water and flowing is called lotic. Okay, these are some limnological terms. So whatever it is written, I have already explained here, right? Yeah, I have already said everything. This is just a summary of a type of wetlands under Ramsar definition: natural, fresh, brackish, salt. Whatever I have told just now, it is pictorially represented. And these are the examples of flowing water, rivers and streams, lake, marsh, pond. They are static. And again, if you go to saltwater wetland, salt lakes, intertidal areas, basically coastal wetlands, they come under this category. Similarly, there are artificial or man-made wetlands. They are also considered wetlands. Again, fresh, and we cannot distinguish exactly brackish and saline as far as man-made wetlands are concerned, because if you go to some salt pans, the brackishness, I mean the degree of saltiness will vary from brackish to saline. Okay, so this is an excellent example of man-made saline wetland. And these are all examples of freshwater wetlands, man-made. As per Ramsar Convention classification, there is an comprehensive classification of wetlands as per Ramsar. And according to that classification, there are 42 types of wetlands in the world, which may include floodplains, then lakes, estuaries, deltas. All these wetlands can be seen on the screen. Now I'm saying Ramsar. What is Ramsar? Is it a Sarovar on the name of Lord Rama? No. That Ramsar is actually a seaside town or city in Iran. And for the first time in 1971, many experts who have been working on wetland hydrology or wetland plants or wetland birds, they had gathered there in an international conference. And here, all these people were worried about the degradation of wetlands all over the world. And many, at that time, representatives from many countries had assembled there, and they signed a treaty, an international treaty, જેને આપણે ગુજરાતીમાં સમજૂતી અથવા તો સંધિ કહી શકાય, એને એક્સેપ્ટ કરવા માટે સિગ્નેચર કર્યા. ઓકે, so at that and it was the day of 2nd February 1971. અને ત્યારથી માંડીને આજ સુધી એ દિવસની મેમરી માટે આપણે 2nd February each year એને આપણે વર્લ્ડ વેટલેન્ડ્સ ડે તરીકે ઉજવવામાં આવે છે. એટલે એમાં કોઈ ફટાકડા નથી ફોડવામાં આવતા, પણ વિવિધ પ્રકારના પ્રોગ્રામો એ દિવસે વેટલેન્ડ લગતા કરવામાં આવે છે. એમાં ગીર ફાઉન્ડેશન તરફથી પણ અમારે ત્યાં વર્કશોપ્સ ને બધું થતું હોય છે. તો આ વખતે અને આ જે દરેક વર્ષની જે ઉજવણી કરવાની એની એક ગ્લોબલ થીમ રામસર સેક્રેટરીએટ તરફથી આપવામાં આવે છે. અને આ વર્ષે એની ગ્લોબલ થીમ છે વેટલેન્ડ એક્શન્સ ફોર પીપલ એન્ડ નેચર. Okay, so that is the global theme for the year 2022, wetland actions for people and nature. Okay, now atyare halna tabakke there are 172 countries who have accepted this Ramsar Convention for conservation of wetlands in their respective countries. Okay, and these countries are called contracting parties. Okay, total there are 2,414 wetlands which have got designation of Ramsar site, and they cover about 25 lakh square kilometer area. Okay. Now, Ramsar sites is also the synonymous phrase is wetland of international importance. What is Ramsar site? If Nal Sarovar is Ramsar site, what does that mean? It means it is a wetland of international importance. Okay. In India, there are 47 Ramsar sites, latest figure, and out of them, currently 3 are in Gujarat: Nal Sarovar, Thol, and Wadwana. Nal Sarovar was declared in, I think, 2012. But Thol and Wadwana, they are recently declared as Ramsar site, and Khijadia wetland is in pipeline. So I think in near future we will have 4 Ramsar site in Gujarat. That is these 4 wetlands of international importance in Gujarat. So Nal, Thol, Wadwana, and Khijadia. Okay. So just for your knowledge sake, UP currently has the maximum number of Ramsar site, and it has 10 Ramsar sites. Punjab has 6 Ramsar sites. Jammu Kashmir has 4. And I would say that Gujarat has also 4. So Gujarat is in a very not bad condition. It has a good status of Ramsar site. But I think Gujarat is much richer in case of as far as wetlands are concerned, as far as wetland extent is concerned, than UP or even Punjab. So definitely Gujarat has all the possibilities of going beyond that 10 Ramsar sites. And our authorities are working very efficiently for that right now. So in near future, we will have more than 10 sites. I'm sure about it. Now, going to next slide. And this is just a pictorial scenario of where all these Ramsar sites are distributed. We have in Nal Sarovar and Thol, etc. are here, Wadwana, right? Khijadia will come soon. I have not shown in this picture because currently it is not declared as Ramsar site. Okay, now the last one is Hyderpur wetland in UP. So again, UP showed very enthusiasm in declaring more and more Ramsar sites. Coming to some wetland scenario, I'm telling this for the benefit of students, that if you consider the geographical area of the world, 6.4% is under wetland. And currently total coming to Indian wetlands, 15.26 million hectare area is under wetland, which constitutes 4.6% of the total geographic area of India. And inland wetlands cover about this much square kilometer, I think 1 lakh, and 41,000 square kilometer coastal wetlands. And please keep in mind that this is all based on mapping by Space Application Center, and they could not map in detail below 2.25 hectare. So all these figures, especially inland and coastal wetland figures, are based on wetland area 2.25 hectare or more. Okay, so this is a scenario. Wetlands in Gujarat, I don't know what is this. Okay, wetlands in Gujarat cover 34,750 square kilometer. Okay, so that is the wetland area for Gujarat, 34,750 square kilometer. Now you can very clearly see these are the top. This is the scenario of 5 top wetland states in the country, and this is according to the extent of wetland, not according to the number of wetlands. So you can very clearly say that Gujarat is topmost because it has its wetland area constitutes about 23% of total wetland area of the country. And no other state has this much proportion of wetlands with respect to total wetland area of the country. Okay, so Gujarat is on the top, and you know the reason. Gujarat has the longest coastal line, so contribution is more from the coastal wetlands. It has longest coastline, and it has Great Run and Little Run, which are also partly they are laymen call them desert run, but actually it is also seasonal wetland. Okay, so our રણ નો એરિયા બહુ મોટા છે. I think ગ્રેટ રન તો 12-13,000 સ્ક્વેર કિલોમીટર છે, અને લિટલ રન પણ 5,000 સ્ક્વેર કિલોમીટર, એનાથી વધારે થોડું. તો all this long coastline and 2 runs, they contribute a lot in making the total wetland area of Gujarat. Okay. See, now total geographical area of Gujarat is this much. And if you consider total wetland area, which is 34,750 square kilometer, it constitutes 17.56% of geographical area of Gujarat, which is again highest. If you go to Maharashtra or maybe Madhya Pradesh, their proportion of wetland with respect to the geographical area of those respective state is not this much higher. So our state is wetland state, definitely. And I think Salim Ali or somebody had told that if Gujarat was not well known for lion, it could be well known for its water birds, because there are so many wetlands and lakhs of water birds come every year here. And even after these migratory birds go back, there are many resident birds also. So it is very rich from wetland and water bird point of views. Okay, our state. These are some nationally important wetlands in Gujarat. Means Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. It has declared about 115 wetlands in India as nationally important wetlands. Out of those 115, 8 are in Gujarat, like Nal Sarovar, Thol, Pariyej, Little Run of Kutch, Great Run of Kutch, Vadwana, and Nani Kakrad. Okay. These are the glimpses of water birds. This is one of the area of thrust of Gir Foundation, doing research on water birds. And I am aware that I am talking more with the people of botany department. So these are the glimpses of some aquatic plants of our Gujarat's wetland, like Potamogeton crispus. Then I think this is Nodusus. Then Stachynia, Hydrilla, and Nymphoids or Nymphoides, and this is water lily nymphia. Marsilia, a pteridophyte, Nilambo, Typha, and I think Polygonum, duckweed or lemna. And this is a well-known water hyacinth, which is considered as weed, some kind of cyperaceae plant, and this is limnophyton. So all these plants or hydrophytes are more or less commonly seen in our wetlands. Now, Indian laws for wetland conservation. Our government is not blind to the importance of wetlands. And currently, the latest one is Wetland Rules 2017. Every student should keep this in mind, that India has now Wetland Conservation and Management Rules 2017, which are originated from some provisions in Environment Protection Act 1986, which is very famous. So we can say that wetland rules are offshoot from this Environment Act 1986. They have very stringent measure for saving wetlands from their misuse or something like that, to save their main ecological or original ecological characteristics. In other words, they are very much for the wise use and conservation of wetlands. Okay. We also already have some acts like Wildlife Protection Act, Indian Forest Act 1927, Biological Diversity Act. All they apply to wetland biodiversity or wetlands themselves. And this is very famous Water Pollution Act 1974. It is also helpful to conserve water quality of wetlands. And most importantly, in our Indian Constitution itself, we have Article 48A and 51A. I think 51A is the fundamental duties of citizen, which says that every citizen should be careful to save its lakes, protect its lakes, besides forests and all those things. So lake is clearly mentioned, which is nothing but the wetland. And 48A is the obligation of the states to improve the environment and to improve wildlife. I mean, save wildlife. So wildlife includes wetland wildlife also. So both these articles are for the well-being of wetlands by law. Now, one of the terms I have used in this title is versatility. So why they are versatile? There are many types. The marsh, then fen, peatland, swamp, etc. Everybody knows about marsh and swamp, but fen and peatland may be a bit unfamiliar. Peatland is, as I told earlier, actually fen is a type of peatland only. There are two types of peatlands, fen and bog, which I have not shown in this picture. So fen is generally fed by groundwater, and its acidity is low. It is more alkaline water, and it has several emergent plants and all those things. Bogs are dominated by mosses, and their water is more acidic. Okay, so these are both peatland because they have characteristic of accumulating the peat. I have already explained what is peat. Okay, swamp means the woody vegetation domination here, like our mangrove and all this. All the plants which are dominating there, they are woody, that is swamp. And here they are herbaceous, that is called marsh. Again, another type, shallow lake, Nal Sarovar, famous example. Mangroves, they are the types of natural wetlands. Again, man-made wetlands, I have already told, these are all Gujarat scenario, like dams and paddy fields, irrigation reserve, village pond, etc. Again, standing water wetland here, and this is running water. I have already explained about it. This is the lentic wetland, this is the low-tick wetland. There are, everybody might have heard the name Sambar Lake, and that is saline inland wetland. Usually saline wetlands are coastal wetland, but Sambar is an exception. It has a very huge, large area also, I think 200 square kilometer or more. So it is a saline wetland. Nal Sarovar is, though freshwater wetland, under the effect of evaporation of water and due to inherent salinity, during summer, its water becomes brackish to saline. But still, originally it is freshwater wetland, our own Nal Sarovar. Okay, so again, this is a coastal wetland scenario, I mean glimpses, and this is inland wetland. So I have given this slides to give an idea about versatility of wetlands. There are many types. Okay, coming to wetland values, three main values: ecological balance, ecosystem services, and biodiversity. Some examples of ecological balance, that is storage and cycling of water, that is hydrological cycle working in the wetland. Then wetlands trap the nutrients which are being drained with the rainwater runoff. So wetlands trap the nutrient, then they cycle the nutrients. So this is again a very important ecological process for which leads to ecological balance. Provisioning of nutrients to aquatic plants and food to aquatic animals. Then many wetlands provide stopover sites or refueling sites for long distance migratory water birds. Suppose a migratory bird starts from England and it comes to Nal Sarovar. It is not necessary that it will come to Nal Sarovar in one stretch. It will be stopping from in various wetlands coming on the way. So that is called stopover sites. They stop there, they regain their energy through taking food, and then they proceed further. There are exceptions that some birds start from England, then they may come directly to India. So the nature is full of strange things. Okay, so this is about refueling sites or stopover site. Then they provide nesting opportunity to resident water birds. Okay, and they provide drinking water even to the terrestrial bird, livestock, and even wild animals like wolf and leopard, etc. So these are all ecological balance values. Ecosystem service values, that they are mainly for human community: flood control, groundwater recharge, soil erosion reduction, climate change buffering, water supply in droughts, food for human beings, recreation and ecotourism for people, and filtration of water, etc., etc. So this is and food for fodder for livestock also. Okay, if you go to Nal Sarovar, you will see that canoes are full of some typha or some cyperaceae plant, and the people take it to take for their livestock. So that is a fodder value. So these are called the ecosystem services. The most important very interesting ecosystem service is flood control. In Brazil and Paraguay and Bolivia, 3 countries, there is a very huge wetland having the area of, I think, 1,87,000 square kilometer. And it is an inland wetland. It is the largest tropical wetlands in the world. It is located in South America. And it is fed by one mighty river called Paraguay River, which is about 2,600 kilometers long. I think it is number 2 in South America. And when the flood comes in this river, it is, you can imagine, it is the largest river, a very mighty river. So how would be its flood? Okay, but luckily it passes through this pentanal wetland, which is an area of lakhs of square kilometer. So this wetland this may be a symbolic picture, but it very nicely explains what is the scenario. If the water is coming from upland, from Paraguay River, that flood water it gets a very huge space in this pantanal wetland. Okay, so it literally works like a sponge. This wetland, it absorbs the flood water and reduces its impact, and then that water slowly goes out of this big pantanal wetland. So what is the advantage? A lot of advantages, that in that area, even the flood is coming, this wetland has absorbed that flood water impact, and that wetland has made human life safer in this area. So destructive force of that flood has been reduced by this mighty wetland that is called pantanal wetland, and a lot of wildlife live in this area. So flood also affect wildlife. You might have heard that when flood comes in Brahmaputra, even big animals like rhinos are affected. So this big wetland saves these kind of wild animals also. So students should keep in mind this excellent example of pantanal wetland in South America. Okay. Even our Nal Sarovar has an area of about 147 square kilometer as per the Space Application Center mapping. But in good monsoon, its area swells to 350 square kilometer also. So in the monsoon, when lot of water comes in that area, Nal Sarovar stores that water, and there are about 12 or 13 villages surrounding that Nal Sarovar. If Nal Sarovar were not there, that water would enter into the villages and may create problems for the villagers. But Nal Sarovar comes to the rescue of these people, and it stores that strong rainwater runoff and reduce the effect of flooding. Okay. Now, wetlands are also called kidneys of earth. Why? Because wetlands, whenever with the rainwater runoff, many nutrients are getting drained. These nutrients may include phosphates or nitrates, or may sometimes heavy metals also. Okay, so these wetlands like marshes and swamps, they store these kinds of nutrients, and they don't allow these nutrients to go into the river and then further to the oceans. So and these nutrients are consumed in these wetlands like marshes and freshwater by microbes and by aquatic plants in those wetlands. And ultimately, our rivers and streams and ultimately oceans are saved from the bad effect of nutrition. You might have heard the word eutrophication, that is excess nutrients, and it is characterized by a lot of algal bloom. Okay, so these wetlands contribute in reducing the bad effect of nutrients. Okay, even they trap heavy metals also, and when the water drains into groundwater aquifer, before that this wetland filter out these heavy metals, so our groundwater becomes safer as far as heavy metals are concerned. Okay, so they are considered kidneys of earth. Then coming to the biodiversity value of wetlands, wetlands are called biodiversity supermarket or biological supermarket. It's a very interesting term. Why biological supermarkets? Because the wetlands are rich in nutrients, and they provide lot of food to lot of organisms at various trophic levels. Okay, food webs. They have very extensive food webs, and various organisms live at various trophic levels. So wetlands have capacity to provide food or nutrients to hundreds of organisms. So just like supermarket, whenever you go to the supermarket, you can get a lot of commodities. You can pick up anything. There are many things available in that. In the same way, in the wetlands, there are many organisms available, and that's why they're called biological supermarkets. Okay. Now they are so rich, and especially coastal wetlands are considered more biological diverse places. 40% of the world's plant and animal species live or breed in wetlands, and over 1 lakh freshwater species have been identified in wetlands. It can be anything like fish and maybe plankton, everything. So around 1 lakh freshwater species are there in the wetlands, and 30% of the known fish live in wetlands, and annually 200 new fish species are discovered. So you can consider that how productive and how fertile these ecosystems are. And it is very pity that in earlier centuries, even in the developed countries like USA, wetlands were considered as wastelands. જેને આપણે ખરાબાનો વિસ્તાર કહીએ, એને શું કરાતું હતું, એને પૂરી નાખો કે આ તો નકામી વસ્તુ છે. But actually, when research went on, and scientists came to know about their true value as very fertile and productive ecosystem, people are now quite sensitive to conserve these wetlands. Okay. What is the time? Now, another phrase which I had used in the my title is vulnerability. Though wetlands are versatile and valuable, they are unfortunately vulnerable. Okay, vulnerable mainly due to human actions. You can see these pictures. I think everybody can hear me. Hello, is it there? Okay. So wetlands are drained. We take out lot of water from wetlands. We forget that this water is not just for human being, but it is also for a plethora of organisms. Okay, including birds and plankton and everything. So we take its water by digging the canals and everything. I mean, this is the picture of the draining the wetlands. Okay, so we overexploit water resource of the wetlands for our irrigation needs. Now, our agriculture is more or less, it is very less for livelihood. It is commercial agriculture. So we take a lot of water from the wetland. If you go to any wetland, not any, but many wetlands of Gujarat, you will see this kind of diesel engines continuously working on them. And we extract a lot of water continuously. So we forget that we are part of nature and we need water for our livelihood. But in the same way, many other organisms, especially aquatic organisms, need more all this water. So that way we make them vulnerable. Okay. Then siltation, then damming, then we fill the wetland. Filling is one of the major problems. If a particular farmer is in search of additional land for agriculture, he may fill up some shallow wetland and get additional land. Okay, I'm just giving a hypothetical example. And sometimes we encroach the wetland shores. You can see the bottommost picture. So this buildings have come up right up to the shore of this wetland. Actually, it is that area is also part of wetland, but who cares? In search of more and more space for creating new buildings, we encroach the shorelands of the wetlands. Okay, then we pollute the wetlands, the topmost picture. So again, these are all the different ways by which we make our wetlands vulnerable. And this water pollution can be from industry, but not only industry, but from also villages. The village sewage, it also create pollution for wetlands, pollution of the wetland. And there is also agricultural pollution, because we use a lot of pesticides and fertilizers in agriculture areas. And when during the rainy season, along with the rainwater runoff, a lot of fertilizers and pesticides come into the wetlands and they create pollution. Okay, so all these are the example how human being is making our wetlands vulnerable. It is said that wetlands are vanishing 3 times faster than the forest, and 35% of wetlands have disappeared since 1970s, and 87% have been lost since 1700s. Between 1970 and 2014, population of fish, birds, mammals, amphibians, and reptiles has declined by 60%. Since 1970, 81% of the inland wetland species and 36% of coastal marine species have declined. These all figures are very authentic, taken from WWF or Earthwatch Agency and all those things. 25% of wetland species are threatened with extinction. So I think these many points are enough to understand how human beings are making our wetlands vulnerable. Climate change, again, climate change is very important or very serious factor threatening the wetlands. Now, climate change is not dangerous only for wetlands, but wetland ecosystem is one of the ecosystems that are threatened due to the climate change. And this threat not only comes from the complexity of changes in relationship between climate and wetland, but also due to synergy of climate change factors and other driving factors like land use, land cover change, and pollution of the wetlands. Okay, so when all these climatic drivers and non-climatic drivers come together and function on and work on some wetland, it creates very complicated situation, and it is very difficult, expensive, and impossible to reverse. Okay, so always remember that climate change does not work in isolation. It works in the synergy of other non-climatic factors like land use, land cover changes, and degradation of wetlands like pollution and solid waste dumping, etc. Okay. Now, if you take just climate change into account, how can it affect the wetlands? So it can affect wetlands through change in temperature, change in precipitation, and sea level changes. Okay, if you take temperature, as per IPCC emission scenario, the average global surface temperature can increase by 1.5 to 5.8 degrees centigrade, and this climatic warming may cause rise in temperature of water in several wetlands. Especially, it is said that shallow water lakes are affected more by the temperature rise. Okay, just keep in mind that many of our wetlands in Gujarat like Nal Sarovar, Chari Dhand, then Mokar Sagar, they are all shallow water wetlands. So temperature rise will cause the rise in water temperature of those shallow water wetlands. And if some species are stenothermal, I think everybody is aware about this terms like stenothermal or eurythermal. Steno means those organisms having some specialized range of bearing the temperature. Okay, they cannot survive well beyond that narrow range of favorable temperature. So if the temperature of water goes beyond that favorable range for some stenothermal organism, they will be affected. Secondly, we know that when the temperature of water of a wetland rises, it creates DO depletion. And many of us know that DO is very important factor for fish and other aquatic animals. Okay, so for example, I think fish requires at least some level of DO, maybe up to 4 ppm or something like that. If it goes below that, it creates a problem for the fish. So indirectly, temperature affects the fish and other organisms because it creates changes in DO level of the wetland waters. Coming to precipitation, we know that the wetland works as sponges for the flood. But if continuously precipitation level goes on and on, it increases over the years, there is some limit of each wetland, how much it can store, right? So if due to climate change, precipitation increases over the long period, a wetland may lose its capacity to work efficiently as sponge or flood control buffers. Okay. On the other hand, if due to temperature change, due to precipitation change, if drought occurs frequently, then again the wetlands cannot store water in ordinary situation when the rainfall is normal and everything. Then when the summer approaches, wetlands still have some water and it is very happily used by local communities and livestock, etc. But if drought occurs frequently, okay, on and on, then that storage capacity of wetland will be adversely affected, and ultimately it will lose its purpose to quench thirst of many livestock, animals, and even people. Okay. Sea level changes. I won't go much in detail, but I will give a good example of our Jamnagar coast. There is a Marine National Park in Jamnagar, and there is a Khijadia wetland in Jamnagar. Okay, they are very adjacent to each other. And Khijadia wetland or Khijadia sanctuary is declared to cover two or three freshwater ponds, which are called Khijadia lakes, right? So they are originally they are freshwater wetlands, though they are very near to the coastal area. But if sea level rise occurs, and if the coastal waters or sea water enters into this freshwater lake or Khijadia lakes, it may definitely affect the organisms which have been adapted to live in freshwater conditions since hundreds of years. So that sea level change will definitely affect to such freshwater wetlands which are near the or in the coastal area, and it may also affect the estuaries, because estuaries is a transitional zone. The water of estuary may change from it is more or less brackish in nature, but if sea level rise occurs and if more and more water enters the estuaries, it may change its water quality, and it will affect the organism living in the estuaries. You may not be knowing that estuaries are cradles for fisheries, where all young fish, they fingerlings, etc., they breed here. I mean, they get birth here, and then they gradually enter the main sea. Okay, so if sea level change occurs, these kinds of estuaries and freshwater wetland in the coastal area, they all will be affected. Now, I think I have explained some basic things about wetlands, and I have tried to explain how wetlands are versatile and valuable and vulnerable. I will come to now our Gir Foundation's work on wetland. Uh, Gir Foundation has been given a scheme of ecological monitoring of important wetlands of Gujarat by our Forest and Environment Department of our state. And this scheme has been given since 2016. So our researchers carry out ecological monitoring for Nal Sarovar, which is very important wetland for the state. We do seasonal monitoring. We try to cover all the 3 seasons each year, and we also monitor other wetlands, important wetlands of the state besides Nal Sarovar, which include Thol, Pariyej, Kaneval, Vadwana, Khijadia, Charidand, Kaj and Mokar Sagar, which are these 2 are in Saurashtra. This one is in Kutch, Charidand. Khijadia is again in Saurashtra. Vadwana in central Gujarat, Vadodara. Kaneval, Pariyej, they are in Kheda district, and Thol is in Mehsana district. Okay, so it is in North Gujarat. So our researchers have been continuously monitoring these wetlands, covering all the 3 seasons. Okay, so these are the glimpses of our technical reports. Some of them are biennial reports. This last one is the annual report. So we have all the technical information about these Nal Sarovar. I think these are the reports of important wetlands besides Nal Sarovar. We also do ecological monitoring, seasonal monitoring of important estuaries of Gujarat, which include Sabarmati, Mahi, Narmada, Tapi, Ambika, and Purna. Okay, so this is another work which we have been doing because estuaries are wetlands, nothing else. So we also cover Gir also covers this 4 or 5 estuaries of Gujarat. Okay, and of course we carry out ecological monitoring of Nal Sarovar. These are the 3 reports, technical reports of Nal Sarovar ecological monitoring. In this ecological monitoring, our researchers do multiple tasks. Some of us are insect experts. Okay, some of us are spider experts. Some of us are water quality experts. All youngsters. So they are very enthusiastic to cover all these wetlands, and it involves a lot of traveling and staying there and doing monitoring for a week or more. Okay, so these are the glimpses of different kinds of aspects covered under ecological monitoring, like aquatic insects and this plankton and this water quality and this everything, spider research. Okay, these are some more glimpses you can see here. I think I'm showing this to encourage our young students that this kind of work is going on in our the state, and if you love nature and working in nature, this is a very good institution, Gir Foundation. Okay, vegetation people do putting Daubenmeier fair here. Okay, so they do coordinate studies and species identification. This is the plankton sampling here shown. Okay, so this is our teams are always multidisciplinary. Here bird identification is going on, bird enumeration. So we carry out research covering multiple aspects, as it can be very clear from all these glimpses. Okay. This also involves travel through boat. Going. These people are going to Aliabet in estuary, Narmada estuary. Okay, again, a plankton sampling glimpse and insect work going on, entomological work. Gir Foundation has published some interesting books on wetland. Latest one is Wetland Birds of Nal Sarovar, which is about 300-page voluminous book covering all the water birds which are recorded at Nal Sarovar, and it is based on our own research and forest department's data. They are very. We always work in with the link with forest department, and their officers are always helpful to us to provide logistic and other kinds of support. Otherwise, this kind of work is impossible, I would say. And we have also produced common wetland plant book, then common insect wetland, common insects book of the wetlands. Then we have produced a wonderful book on important wetland destination of Gujarat, and the first edition volumes were exhausted, so we had to publish the second edition also. Okay, and we also publish books in Gujarati, considering we are working in Gujarat. So sometimes you will see the same book with one in English and one in Gujarati. Okay, Gujaratna Mahatvana Jalplavi Kshetro, in the same way, Cranes of Gujarat and Gujaratni Garima Saras Kunj and Karkara. Okay, so this is all popular publication by Gir Foundation to inculcate interest in wetlands among the laymen and students. We have also produced 2 films on wetlands. One is on Nal Sarovar, 30 minutes film, and important wetlands of Gujarat, in which we have documented about 10 wetlands of Gujarat which are important, like Thol and Khijadia and Charidand and all those things, which are already shown. One interesting work by Gir Foundation is Ramsar information. I mean, giving Ramsar status to Vadwana wetland of Vadodara in central Gujarat. So Gir Foundation was given a task of filling Ramsar information sheet, which is though it is called sheet, it is at least 30 to 35 pages document, and it involves it requires filling of very, very technical information, and all that information should be approved and accepted by Ramsar Secretariat, Ramsar Headquarters for Asia. And once they are satisfied about the importance of this wetland based on all these criteria, then only they would approve that, okay, Vadwana can be called Ramsar site. So we are very glad to say that Gir Foundation had developed Ramsar information sheet for this Vadwana wetland, and now it is a Ramsar site. Okay, and I think in the given time, I have tried to do some justice to this subject. And if there are any questions, you are welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for such an in-depth insights about wetlands. We have questions from participants. The first question is, please explain the research perspective in wetlands. What are the research gaps in wetland studies?
Oh, there are lots of gaps, because if you consider Gujarat only, the first gap is that we are still unable to do research in many, many wetlands. Okay, Gir Foundation is doing on Nal Sarovar and some 6-7 wetlands more and some estuaries. Okay, but there are hundreds of wetlands in Gujarat which are very, very important, and that is the one very, very visible gap that we are unable to. Means Gujarat is still wanting people to work more and more, work on more and more wetlands. Okay, in Kutch and in Saurashtra, in North Gujarat, in Central Gujarat, everywhere wetlands are available, and we must have the inventory of flora, fauna for all those wetlands, and that is the basic work. We are not going for any experimental work again in the wetland, but at least this kind of inventory is required, which is still not complete, I would say. So there is one big area where our youngsters can work for their dissertations and PhDs, etc. Then, fortunately or unfortunately, people are working more on birds. There are hundreds of bird watchers also in Gujarat. But what about macro invertebrates? Okay, Gir Foundation has entomologist, a person, an expert working on spiders also. We also work on snails and other mollusks, but it is not possible everywhere. So uh, we have a lot of work on birds relatively, but very scanty work on wetland plants, wetland invertebrates, macroinvertebrates, wetland fish. So all these aspects are waiting for young researchers to be justified or satisfied. So that is another taxa-wise gap, I would say. And we again lack any kind of experimental work. For example, for my PhD, I did experiments in the wetland in USA where we actually measured how much a particular species called mute swan consuming that submerged vegetation. So that kind of experimental work is also required. So that is my humble feedback to this question.
Okay. Second question is, sir, nowadays wetlands are disappearing hastily, especially in developing countries. What can we do to conserve wetlands?
Yeah, means it has to be. See, law is doing its work. Where there are various acts, and as I said, there are now wetland rules by Government of India. So government is definitely working to save these wetlands. But main thing is that each layman should have a consciousness that human civilization has started from river banks. So river banks are nothing but wetlands. So we should not forget our roots. In the modern man, there is a tendency of using the natural resource and then get separated from it. So we have just a utilizing approach. We don't want to conserve what we need, and that is the problem. So on one hand, there is a need of developing policies and acts for wetland conservation, which is already going on. But then there should be strict implementation of those laws and policies. And I would say that courts and National Green Tribunal, they are very much aware and they are very much strict about protecting wetlands. Sometimes they give warning and reminders to governments also that this wetland is in bad shape. Okay, and it should be conserved. Some kind of development can be stopped by the court, honorable court. For example, in Bhuj, there is a wetland called Pragsar wetland. Some construction activity started considering that some portion of that wetland remains always dry. So somebody did PIL and court immediately stopped that construction work, even by civic authority. So courts are very, very alert about this. But what is important is our students should take wetland related subject. Then they should also do some kind of research on wetlands, and laymen should be very much aware about the importance of wetlands. So education is also important, research is also important, and law is also important.
True.
Right. The next question is, what are global and Indian conservation measures for wetlands?
See, if you are talking about global, then I would say Ramsar. Ramsar is a global treaty for conservation of wetlands, and just keep in mind, Ramsar is not a law. Okay, if Nalsaro is declared as Ramsar site, there is no international law working on that for its protection. It gives just a tag value to that wetland. It gives international tag to that particular wetland, which again gives many indirect benefits to that particular wetland. For example, our government become more alert about that wetland. Then many people from abroad, they know about this wetland. So more and more international tourists can also come to those wetlands. For example, Nalsaro is the best example. Okay, and more people coming from different parts of the world helps our government to get more revenue, and ultimately that is used to conserve that wetland. So that is about the international or global thing. What was the next part, madam? Sorry, national or local?
Yes, sir. Indian conservation.
See, Indian conservation we should start thinking from our own values. In our in our culture, conservation is already there. Okay, let it be a tree called Ficus religiosa or Ficus bengalensis, but it is. I have seen people doing some vidhi or religious activity on the bank of some wetland. There are temples on the bank of wetlands. So our they should relate this religion with that ecosystem. That if we need such religious activity, wetland must be there. It should not be tempered. Okay, so that is one thing. So religion, our root, strong root, should be revisited and should be taken care of. That is number one. Second, as I told you earlier, our constitution itself says about protecting lakes and other wetlands. So we should honor it, and we should do strict implementation for that. And again, we should protect our wetlands by obeying our laws and acts, etc. So that is my short answer.
Right. Sir, next question is, what is the boundary of the coastal wetland?
Boundary of the coastal wetlands. See, there is one coastal regulation zone. So that can be considered as a coastal boundary. But see, again, wetland delineation is a very, very big subject. If I see that in Nal Sarovar or in some coastal area, water comes up to this, so I will say that, okay, wetland ends there. That is not the case. If I want to delineate a wetland, that where the wetland stops and from where upland starts, it should have many criteria, like presence of some wetland plants, then presence of hydric soil, then oxidation reduction potential. Okay, so in USA, the wetland delineation is a very serious subject, and I think unfortunately we are not at that level. We have to take into account ratio of obligate and facultative wetland plants. How many of them are obligate and how many are facultative? At that level, they are doing research. Okay, so we either it is coastal wetland or inland. There are multiple factors which should be assessed to decide the boundary of that particular wetlands. And there are good books and research papers available on wetland delineation also. I talked about the experimental work on wetlands. So it is very high time that our Indian universities and other organizations should focus on wetland delineation subject to actually do it. Yes, please.
Okay. And sir, the last question is, any success stories of community-based wetlands management and conservation?
Uh, yeah, there are some examples. Community based. Okay. There are some village ponds and some in Gujarat itself, where people have developed vegetation around that wetland and which attracted heronry birds, and they have stopped degradation of that wetland. But I am not okay. There are in South India there is one big heronry which is being protected by interest of people, local people only. Heronry means where the aquatic birds like heron, egrets, they breed regularly. So they protect these kinds of heronries for the well-being of birds, and maybe it may be due to religious beliefs also. Uh, but unfortunately, the example of destruction of wetlands are more as compared to the example of community effort to save some wetland.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. We had announced a poster competition on 3 themes from UG, PG, and research scholars, and I'm happy to share that the results are ready. I request Archana ma'am to announce the results of the online poster competition.
Thank you, Ashma. An online poster competition was announced on 3 themes. Theme A, Vulnerability of Wetlands of Gujarat. Theme B, Conservation of Wetlands of Gujarat. And Theme C, Biodiversity in Wetlands of Gujarat. We are very happy that UG, PG, and research scholars, everybody participated wholeheartedly. We have the results here with us. For UG category first, Theme A, Budding Researcher Award goes to Saloni Rani Swain. Theme B, Budding Researcher Award goes to 3 students, Jaideep Parmar, Pooja Dubey, and Vishwa Shah. Theme C, Budding Researcher Award goes to Nivedita Tripathi. For postgraduate, Theme A, Young Scientist Award goes to two students, Krishna Sodha and Riya Mehta. Theme B, Young Scientist Award goes to three students, Shavin Parikh, Palak Mewada and Kirtan M. Patel. Theme C, Young Scientist Award goes to two students, Shifa Mansoori and Shubham Dabgar. Research Scholars category, Theme A, Young Scientist Award goes to Roshni Patel. Theme B, Young Scientist Award goes to three scholars, Jevin Patel, Dhruva Jani and Prachi Talsania. Theme C, Young Scientist Award goes to three scholars, Rachna Suthar, Priyanka Pati and Riddhi Rathod. I am happy to announce this and congratulations to all the winners.
Thank you, ma'am. I request Maitriya sir to present the formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Osma, for share this event in this concluding session by the vote of thanks. Our Honorable Vice Chancellor, respected Professor Dr. Himanshu Pandya, Pro Vice Chancellor Dr. Jagdish Bhavsar, Registrar Dr. P.M. Patel sir, ACF Ms. Vibha Goswami, Scientist Dr. Ketan Tatu, my colleagues and dear participants. At the outset, I thank Professor Dr. Himanshu Pandya, Dr. Jagdish Bhavsar and Dr. P.M. Patel for always encouraging us and blessing us. I thank our chief guest, Vibha ma'am, for sparing her time for us and supporting us. I also thank our distinguished speaker, Dr. Ketan Tato, for giving us an insight into the dynamic wetlands and their significance. I thank the judges for sparing time and helping us in evaluating the posters. I thank all the participants for their enthusiastic participation in today's webinar. I thank Dr. B.S. Agrawal, Director, Rolwala Computer Center, Gujarat University, to facilitate live streaming of the event on University Facebook page and YouTube. I thank Mr. Sagar Panchal from GeoSec for technical help. I also thank Ms. Asma Kazi for anchoring this webinar so gracefully. And last but not the least, I thank my colleagues in the department for their timely help. Thank you and congratulate all the winners, those who are participate in this today's poster competition. Thank you very much.
With this, we come to the end of this session. We have had a very informative and exciting learning experience, and I'm sure all of us will now be able to relate to the role of wetlands and appreciate the need to protect it. I once again thank Dr. Tato for sharing useful information with us. Thank you, sir. The feedback link is on the screen. Please fill it up and receive your e-certificates. On behalf of Department of Botany, Bioinformatics and Climate Change Impacts Management, Gujarat University, I once again thank you all for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.